Hey everyone, welcome again to the BATTASS podcast, the Batman the Animated Series Show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me is...
Sean Murphy, your co-host.
And we are talking about two episodes today. As always, we're talking about Birds of a Feather and What is Reality. And, I guess we'll jump right into it.
Yeah.
Birds of a Feather, story by Chuck Menville, teleplay by Bryn Stevens, directed by Frank Power. And in this one, Veronica Vreeland is looking for a way to create a splash with her next party and arrives at the idea of having a former criminal in attendance, especially if there is one whose manners would create a stir. The Penguin, who has recently reformed, fits the bill perfectly. In the process of convincing the Penguin to come to her party, Veronica finds she likes the corpulent little guy. For his part, the Penguin begins to fall in love with her until he overhears that he is merely being used. So, interesting thing about this, because this breakdown that I just read is technically correct, except it's ignoring the thing that I think makes this episode really interesting and makes it really work, because it's treating all of the actions in this as though they are sincere, when none of them are sincere. And I think that's what makes it really interesting, is that the Penguin... never his reformation isn't because he is realizing the error of his ways and is apologizing to people and stuff. He's just sick of being arrested. So he decides to stop being a criminal, but he still wants all the praise from other criminals, and he still wants all the praise from high society. And when he's brought back in, all he does is just shit talk people. Yeah. And it's actually a really kind of interesting little story.
Yeah. I always liked this episode a lot, and it's not one that I would have thought in the writer's room that it would have been good, you know. But I think overall this is a standout Penguin episode, probably the best Penguin episode I think of the series, minus the almost got him vignette. But as I was watching it, I thought, what's more delusional of the Penguin? Thinking that he's a penguin and going down the road of being a super criminal, or thinking that he's high society and having it in his head that he's different than the other criminals because he keeps it classy? You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah, this episode kind of follows a little bit the trajectory of the Penguin from Batman Returns, where he's kind of angling for both... where he's angling for society, where he's trying to be mayor, and then once he's rejected there is when, I guess technically he's always planning on murdering all the children in Gotham. But he's kind of playing it straight to a point, and until that falls apart, and then he falls back into being the murderous Penguin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really interesting kind of look at his character, because he's being delusional in both ways, really. It's the fact that his reformation is just him deciding not to do any further crime, and not actually realize that that he has harmed people in the past is a it stops it from being a really heartbreaking episode, I think, because if you had played this more straight and had Penguin completely turn over a new leaf, and then have Veronica Vreeland actually start to fall in love with him, and then to pull all that stuff away and turn him back into the Penguin is like really dark.
Yeah, you're right. That's one thing I was thinking watching this, because I love this episode, but if I had to make it better, I think I would lean into Penguin's reformed. He sincerely wants to stop. He gets a second chance with a phone call from high class. He doesn't want to screw it up. He really likes this girl, Veronica. He really is a gentleman. I mean, he really is a good date, other than him being his manners are kind of sloppy. And he gets to defend, they get mugged, and he steps up and kicks some ass with just an umbrella. I mean, if you went that way, and then in the end he legit had his heart broken, I mean, that would be Heart of Ice level good, I think.
I don't know. I don't know if I would go that way, because I actually really like the fact that it's so disingenuous, because I think, I don't know, having him try to turn over a new leaf and then eventually not be able to because of the external pressures of trying to fit back into society and from Batman not trusting him, et cetera, is just so bleak. You know, it's like there's no.
Well, I'm saying do that, but make his reform more sincere. Like play up.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what makes it so bleak, is because he's actually trying to reform, but it's basically the system won't let him do that, so he has to revert back to a life of crime.
But I guess
I don't know. That's too bleak for me, I think.
Well, Batman's all about bleak. But the fact that he flips a switch so easily, like he overhears a conversation and he immediately gasses the both of them. So he had a umbrella that had gas in it, so he was obviously not reformed completely. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think that he, in a way, was trying to reform, but he also had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like he was sort of ready for it not to work out, and that's why he had his gas umbrella with him. You know what I mean? And I feel like if he make the betrayal even harsher and make his reaction even more devastating, I would just turn it up to 11 a little bit.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I think we'd have to agree to disagree on that one, because I think I like the. I'm really interested in the idea that he wants all the benefit of reforming, the perceived benefit, without actually putting the work in, and essentially when that falls away. You know, because he can still have the same character arc that you're talking about, except that he's not actually correct about the reasons. It's more of a because he says at the end of the episode, he's like, I guess it's true what they say. It's society's fault, or high society's fault,
right.
And that's very much an excuse from someone who didn't put the work in to try and do better. You know, it's just he's blaming somebody else when he didn't actually go out of his way to try and actually reform or actually X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that element of it, where he's such a dickhead and thinks so highly of himself that he just assumed that he would just be able to. It's like on The Office when Michael Scott runs out of money, and they're like, well, you can declare bankruptcy. So he just walks out and goes, I declare bankruptcy!
Right.
And think that's all you need to do. I like the character element of him thinking that all you need to do to reform is just to say you have reformed and try to more or less not do any more crime.
Right.
And not actually try to turn things around.
I agree with all that stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end when he says that all he wanted from Veronica was a little bit of friendship, I thought, well, you know, you were sort of buying her jewelry, holding her hand, trying to kiss her. That's not really friendship, but
right.
I kind of see his point.
Mean, she's using him without him knowing, but he's also using her. You know, I think you could probably extrapolate it out and say, oh, maybe he is kind of falling in love with her. But I think part of that is probably him thinking, if I have a high society girlfriend, then that'll make it easier for me to slip back into the high society role.
But what makes Veronica more of the villain, and I don't think she's a villain, I really like her character, and I can go into that after, but what makes her more of the villain here is she's aware of the situation completely. He is not aware of the situation until he figures it out, obviously.
Right. Yeah, it's not. I mean, that's the fun thing about this is he's not really the villain in the episode.
Right.
And what else is fun is that this is another episode that's sort of Batman observing things, as opposed to being directly involved, because he's just sort of a peripheral thing until he kind of has to clean up the pieces at the end.
Right.
And what I like about those episodes is it allows. It really allows you to, or allows them to, the breadth of different kinds of stories to really expand, because you're not limited to everything through the point of view of Batman.
Right.
You can get into criminal-specific stories. You can get into the more fun side stories, like the smaller stuff that we've really liked up to this point. And it's I think I've probably said this before, but I think that's probably the smartest innovation storytelling-wise that they made in the show.
Right. Well, I think the smartest decision they made storytelling-wise was connecting this to Pagliacci.
Why Gotham should not let that opera come to town ever. They're only asking for trouble.
Yeah,
if it's not the Penguin, who's just an opera fan, it's going to be the Joker.
Yeah.
So why even risk it?
Exactly. Yeah. And anytime they have a show like that, they should just stake it just fill the audience with cops, basically, and just wait. Because, Pagliacci ain't going to come out. It's going to be the Joker or Penguin if you're not as lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not up to my Pagliacci understanding as I used to be. But for it kind of it mirrors the idea of love, jealousy, this crying clown, and, the operaticness, of course, fits Penguin. And I think that it also informed a lot of his dialogue, because a lot of his kind of corny one-liners are very much like time for the second act. And I can't remember the other ones. Something about a high note, I think. There was some like Joker-ish dialogue that they were giving him.
Yeah, he's a little bit quippy in this one.
Yeah.
And the whole climax more or less takes place back in the theater with him riding a giant dragon, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah. In the very last shot of Batman leaving through the doorway, I don't know why that always stands out to me. Like Batman standing in the box seats looking at, it's Veronica. So Veronica apologizes to Penguin and says like, well, actually, it wasn't all just me using you. I actually did feel a friendship towards you. And, he's taken away in cuffs and he's basically like, fuck you, rich people are evil. And then the camera ends on her standing in the aisle looking towards Penguin by herself. And then you look up to see Batman standing in the box seats looking down at her. And he his eyes narrow and he glares. And he turns and exits stage right.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was thinking, like, would it be better if he was just, like, left behind the curtain? Or is there a more, like, operatic way for him to leave?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he could have, like, just stepped backwards into the shadows or something.
But he could do that in any alleyway.
That's true, yeah. He puts on his Viking helmet and then soars off into the clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I hadn't thought about that last scene with him squinting, narrowing his eyes at Veronica, because that really kind of reinforces the fact that it's like the Penguin's the one who broke the law here, but you're the one who did something wrong.
Yeah, and I think Bruce does a good job of checking up on them. He's there to arrest Penguin at the very beginning, obviously, for stealing paintings. And then he breaks up the alleyway attack. And then when he realizes Veronica is with Penguin, he shows up as Bruce at an art gallery. And then at an opera to sort of keep tabs and make sure, like, I know that he's friends with Veronica and he's just not sure what the hell her plan is here. But he knows how snobbish high society can be, and he just doesn't want her to do something stupid.
Yeah.
And the end when he's kind of glaring at her. I don't know, maybe. I liked it. I thought the glare was a little intense, but it's a cartoon.
Yeah, this is another one too. Like the Terror in the Sky episode, where it kind of shows that Batman is not infallible, that he does, for lack of a better term, make mistakes, or that his assumptions are not always correct, because he seems to assume the worst out of everybody.
Right.
And in this case, he's, in Terror in the Sky, he's assuming the worst out of Langstrom, which ends up to be incorrect.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's assuming the worst out of the Penguin, which ultimately ends up being correct, but not
for the reasons he
because
thinks.
It's for different reasons. It's very much a gray area.
Well, to go back to why I think you should turn this up to 11 is because I feel bad for Penguin, but he is about to cut a rope where she's hanging from a chandelier, a giant glass chandelier. He's about to cut a rope and she's about to crash to her death. So he doesn't become empathetic at that point to me. Whereas if you made it more that he was actually falling for her, and maybe rather than him put her life in danger, he actually saves her at the end, but in doing so has to go back to jail or something. I know that's kind of tropey in its own way, but I guess I would prefer to see. I would be interested to see a version of that in this episode, rather than they didn't go all the way into the deep end, I'd say.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. I feel like for that to really work for me, I think Veronica and her buddy, his boyfriend, brother, I don't know what he is.
I think it's a brother or gay friend.
I think that they would have to be dialed up. The evil end of them would have to be dialed up a little bit more, even possibly into some sort of crime.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know.
That's interesting.
having Penguin ultimately be the bad guy just because, you know, he has no other choice but to be the bad guy in that situation. I don't know. That doesn't telling that story of someone trying to reform honestly and then being pushed back into a life of crime is really tough. Yeah. So to have if you could do that but have it lead to Veronica and her friend being exposed as some sort of you know, I don't know, embezzling money or I don't know what it would be.
Right.
To allow for Penguin maybe having a change of heart, like you're saying at the end, which then ultimately leads to the downfall of the real villains. I think that would work a little bit better for me.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying I don't like that he tried to kill her. I think that's when he lost all empathy for me, and I thought it was really interesting that he sort of liked her. You know.
Well, you know, and I mean that's the thing. I think the difference where we're coming from with this is I don't really empathize with him at all, and that's kind of what I find interesting. Like I'm not interested in the story because of the amount of empathy that is built with the Penguin. I'm interested in the character of him being someone who's trying to reform on paper essentially only, or at least, you know, trying to take the easiest way out when he's not really serious about it, as opposed to really pulling at my heartstrings about this guy who's trying to turn over a new leaf. I think that's where the disconnect is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I do see it as empathetic. I mean, I never had trouble getting ladies like he does. but I know that's all joking aside, I know that's it's interesting to see him turn over a new leaf, and it becomes much easier for him if he suddenly has a hot girlfriend. You know? Sure. And the minute that doesn't go well, he's just like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to kill you now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, whatever depth that they were building towards was sort of lost when it fell away as being revealed as very shallow, you know? And maybe that's the point of the episode. And obviously, this is a kid show, too. Like, I wouldn't expect, like, a 2-part Heart of Ice episode where Penguin's betrayed and he fell in love and all that stuff. Like, this might not be the TV show to do it, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I found actually really interesting about the way that they do present him as being kind of disingenuous about it, because it almost feels like that was an element that they decided on after. It feels like the story started the way that you're talking about it, but then as they were kicking it around, they were like, well, we can't let the message of this children's show be don't try to be a better person because you're just going to get fucked. You know? So they had to go back and be like, all right, well, what if his change isn't really honest, and his dishonesty working with the dishonesty of the other people ends up in a big ball of dishonesty.
Right. Yeah.
Which may or may not be the way it worked out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is interesting thinking about it through that lens.
Right. I actually referenced this episode when I was writing White Knight. I have a scene that takes place at a high-class gala, and I even have the two characters, Veronica and Pierce.
Really?
Yeah, they're the two rich people. Like, Pierce is the one that says that he's making $1 million off of the best bet in Gotham is crime. And he's the one that
is this the scene with with Bruce? It's a Bruce scene, right? It's not
Bruce,
like a Batman
Bruce
scene.
punches the guy. Bruce basically punches Pierce. Pierce is drunk when they show up at the party. Pierce is like one of the elites, basically, who reveals what's going on and sort of gives Bruce a clue to things that he's missing that the other elites are doing, you know? And I wasn't sure how major these characters were, so I think that they are in the comics, I believe, but they're obviously nothing characters. I mean, Veronica Vreeland comes up a handful of times in the animated series.
Yeah, I was reading the trivia on this. It actually says that Veronica is where the hell is it? Is the first appearance of cartoon exclusive character Veronica Vreeland. So I mean this might be old trivia, so maybe she has shown up. I mean, obviously it is now if you put her in White Knight. But I was thinking that too. I was thinking, I wonder if these are characters, or at least Veronica is a character who's shown up before, because it seems like such an easy shorthand for Bruce needs to talk to somebody else who's rich.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm looking at it right now. Veronica Vreeland. Am I the first one to put her in a comic? That'd be awesome.
I don't know. How did you feel about the animation in this episode?
It was good in parts. Like I remember the clown was really well animated on stage. I thought it was okay. Did you like it? I thought
it was okay. I mean, coming off of that Man-Bat episode that just looks so great. It definitely felt a little slower and a little bit stockier.
Yeah.
And they had a couple of those weird perspective things where, like, Batman, it's like a side shot and Batman is punching, so his fist coming across the camera is like seriously in foreshortened perspective, and it just feels kind of weird. But I did notice there was a moment towards the end when the Joker gets the Penguin gets the briefcase full of money, and he opens the briefcase, and this kind of ties back to the story I told an episode or two ago about, you know, drawing money. Mm-hmm. He opens up the briefcase, and it's filled with green rectangles, and the camera holds on it. There's nothing on the green rectangles, and so for a second I was thinking, oh, did they give him fake money? Because there was nothing on the money other than the fact that it was green. I thought it was just like a dummy bag, you know, full of Walter's underwear from Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then he picks it up and he flips through it and he's like, "Oh, real money." And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." I guess they just didn't take the time to draw the circles on it to make it look like money.
Yeah, you got to go all the way when you draw money, as we said in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked it up. Veronica Vreeland was created in this episode, but her first appearance in comics is in Prime Earth continuity.
Okay.
Which I haven't read, so I'm not the first person to put her into a comic, nor did I think I was.
Yeah. It's I you know, at this point it wouldn't surprise me if all of the characters who popped up only in this show have appeared in comics, because I mean, so as obviously the reason we're doing this show is because we're fans, and and I think so many fellow creators are fans that I'm sure it's full of references and stuff like that.
Yeah. So one little side story about The Color of Money is I was drawing.
Movie?
Sorry, the movie. Yeah,
never mind.
Because we talked before about how much of a pain in the ass it is to render money. So if you're drawing people gambling, usually you draw the money side on, or you zoom out enough so it's just green squares.
Sure.
But I did a comic, and I was working with a colorist. I won't name either. And I had a bit where there was a hold up at a 7-Eleven or something, and this woman is handing over, or there's an old lady robbing a guy at the counter to turn stereotypes on its side. And he's handing her a bunch of money, and I drew them as squares, basically, with little circles, and that was it. It's not that big. Mm-hmm. And the colorist colored them white, like an off-white. I mean, he uses a textured palette, so it wasn't pure white, but it was basically, at a quick glance, white or very light gray. Yeah. So when I was making notes, I'm like, hey, can we make the money? He's not handing her receipts, he's handing her money, so can we make it green? So he goes back and fixes it and sends it to me again, and it's like still basically gray or white. And I wrote back, I'm like, dude, we need this to be green. And he wrote back this long email about how money's not actually green. How if you really zoom in, money's this color and that color and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, but for storytelling purposes, audiences view money as green. We even have expressions, the green, whatever it is. Like, you really fucking fighting me on this? And it really drove me nuts because I stuck my neck out for him a few times. I gave him media ownership in the property we were working on. Like, I'm the boss here, and I don't really pull rank very much, but you're seriously going to argue with me about the color of money? You know?
I wish he had written back, well, for storytelling purposes, maybe you should have finished drawing the money.
But then it would have been like, why is this very well rendered money colored white?
Yeah. That's true.
And I don't care. Maybe he is right. But, I mean, when you travel internationally, like I do, and you have all the money next to each other, ours obviously reads as green. I don't care if you zoom in and it's actually gray and this and that color or whatever. Like, fuck you. It's basically green.
It's basically Leaf Man colored from, or I should say Leaf Man armor colored from Mega Man 2. Where it's like green highlights, but it's kind of like an off-white gray in the middle. But it does,
Yeah. To work in the Mega Man reference that we need to have.
Yeah. Joe will get it.
Yeah, Joe will get it. Oh, man. Joe's probably laughing his balls off right now. I'm famous. Was he one of the ones that bought a ticket to record with us?
Unfortunately, no. It was 3 people that as far as I know, I don't know who they are. So I'm looking forward to having them on, and I have to figure out when that's going to be.
Yeah.
Whether or not I want to try and squeeze it in this season or wait until we start season 3, because I don't know when we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what would you draw in this episode? Or we've kind of switched over into just drawing, but we used to talk about changing stuff. So if there's nothing you'd want to draw, what would you change? And I think we both kind of got into what we might change about it.
Yeah. To answer the drawing question, I don't know. Maybe him on the dragon, I guess, with the Viking
I was
helmet.
Thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's really the most visually interesting thing in the episode.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Here's a question. How do you feel? Because my other instinct was maybe do something with the Pagliacci scene, because it would be fun to draw the stage show and stuff. And,
yeah.
But I was thinking, and this is my question: how do you feel about drawing theaters?
Drawing theaters to me is like drawing airplanes. Like, how do you draw a bunch of seats without having to really draw a bunch of seats?
Right. Yeah.
And audience members, do you do blank faces or do you render them? And
what about the more the flashier aspects, like the actual like the walls where the balconies are and stuff? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if it's like ornate Baroque architecture, it's all that golden gobbledygook puke.
Yeah.
I have certain patience for that, but after a while, I just get tired of it. I could do it for a few panels if I need to, though. How about you?
Yeah, that's one of those things where I really need to kind of change my brain as to how I'm thinking about the space. Mm-hmm. Because I had to do a book that featured a scene inside a theater, like an old busted down theater, and I'm looking at all these great photo references and stuff of these cool theaters.
Yeah.
But I wasn't totally grasping the way the balcony box seats worked.
Right.
Because they kind of come out and they kind of turn it into this weird staircase pattern. Mm-hmm. On the way the walls come out.
Right.
And I'm looking at it and I'm going man, these places are a lot smaller than I thought they were. And also all the cool stuff is on the ceiling. So if you're drawing a scene, unless you're shooting up at the ceiling, all you're really going to see is stage and a wall. And that's not super exciting to draw a lot of times.
No, it's not.
So I guess it's all about camera placement.
Right. I will say drawing a stage and a curtain is very easy. I think drawing curtains over anything or loose cloth is always a time saver for me, because you don't have to render anything. If you basically know how cloth works and have quick... you're talking about different kinds of leaves that you have in your head about things, plants, shrubbery. For me, cloth has 5 different types of folds, and that's it.
Yeah.
But
that's why when I draw cars, when I draw cars, they're always covered in some sort of tarp, so I don't have to actually draw the car. I can just draw the tarp cover.
Why do people hate drawing cars in comics?
Because they're hard.
They're not hard. They're challenging.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. I was drawing Harley Quinn the other day, and I have a close-up of her. With
a big, billowy skirt on, so you wouldn't have to draw her legs.
Yeah. Actually, she did have a skirt on. But I was drawing her eyebrows and the cute little nose, and I had some Adam Hughes stuff open, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, fuck, how does this guy do it, Mm-hmm. And I realized, Adam Hughes drawing perfect pouty lips and shapely women, that's his car. He just excels at that shit. I mean, he just wants to skip the entire script and get to those panels. And that's kind of me with cars. Because when I have to draw women, I just don't have the patience to really make the eyes... I would much rather focus on the car and make the wheels right than focus on Harley Quinn's eyebrows and make those right. And I always regret when I rush through a panel with her, because I usually have to end up redoing it because I didn't slow down enough on her face,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think we all have... I think we all have stuff like that where it's, in retrospect, you're like, I really should have put the time in on that.
Yeah.
Because I'm more or less the other way, where I much more prefer drawing organic stuff.
Yeah.
Just because that's where my skill set lends itself to. I like the stuff that's a little bit more mushy and organic.
Right.
And so anytime that I have to do something, it took me for a long... I don't consider myself a perspective master, because I'm not. It still drives me crazy every time I have to do it, in buildings and stuff. But there are a lot of times where I have in the past drawn a building where I've just sort of half-assed it because I wanted to focus on the stuff I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
And every single time I go back and I go, man, I really should have spent more time on that building, or I really should have worked out the perspective on that car better, or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you do this long enough, you can grab a book off the shelves and figure out where the artist was spending his calories and where he or she wasn't. You know, like, this artist obviously doesn't like drawing cars. You know, usually when I open a book, I see cars being cropped any way you possibly can so that you don't have to actually draw them. And I'm like, oh, come on. You picked a Mustang. Draw it. Don't crop it out. Don't just show me a headlight.
Yeah, I used to. I've done that once or twice where I've doubled down. I've killed two birds with one stone. Where I have to come up with a composition for this street scene. So let's see. If I put the wheel of a tire or the wheel of a car like really front into the composition, that blocks out half the street, so I only have to draw half as many buildings now, and I don't have to draw the whole car. Exactly. So it's a win-win scenario.
Oh yeah, I think every artist has done that. You use like creative cropping that Toth would have used.
Oh yeah.
It's not lazy.
And I mean,
it's creative.
It's. I don't think it's lazy or cheating at all. Because again, as we've talked about, I think probably last episode or so. It's all about focus, right? It's all about what's the most important thing in the scene, and you draw the hell out of that, and then just the rest of it sort of kind of is dressing, you know?
Right. Yeah. I was doing again, I won't mention the artist's name. We were hiring a bunch of artists to do variant covers for us on a book I did a while back, and one of the covers had to have a car in it, and I purposefully gave it to a guy who. We used to be friends, but I was pissed at him for some reason, and I'm like, you know what? This guy's always trying to find ways to not draw cars. I'm going to give him the cover that he wants the least, and he's not going to say no because he wants to impress the writer. Like he's hoping to finagle his own gig out of this. I know, so he's going to do it.
This is revenge that is so specific to an industry,
so
a very small industry.
I gave him the shittiest one, and I made sure like there's no way around it. You have to draw a car, asshole, and he drew it like. 1 point perspective, like put the camera right behind the rear bumper so you don't. He still tried to get out of having to do any work at all, and it is the worst cover that I've ever seen him do. And every time I get these covers, because they're variants of my book, I always have to sign his covers because I did the interiors. And every time I sign it, I'm like, yeah, take that. That's what you get for being lazy and being friends with me and wronging me somehow in the past to make me focus on you like this.
You should start putting an extra piece of paper underneath it and finish the car.
Just draw it the right way.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to give him shit when we were friends. I'm like, you don't like drawing cars. It's obvious you don't like drawing cars. All your cars have wagon wheels. You do this like giant bat cave, and you gave the Batmobile like really poorly. You don't even know how ellipses work, and it shows, you know. And I just wanted to teach him a lesson by proving that he couldn't do what I could do. And it was petty. I get it. I'm not saying I'm the hero in this story.
No, very much not.
I'm the Veronica Vreeland of this story.
Yeah. That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah. And a whole subset of the listeners are giving you the Batman squinty eyes right now. For me, it's not that I don't want to or don't like drawing cars. It's just that it was not something. If I could go back in time and give myself one piece of advice as far as drawing goes, it would be learn how to draw everything. Because if you want to be a comic book artist, you have to know how to draw everything.
Yeah.
You got to know how to draw telephones. You got to know how to draw cars. You got to know how to draw couches and like how couches sit in a room, which is weirder than you think it is.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff like that, and you got to learn perspective. I didn't like perspective in like vehicles and stuff. Never really interested me when I was younger, so I never really put the time in to learn how to do it. And I wish I had, because now I would love to be able to draw. Cars or planes and stuff the way that you draw them. But it's like I have to essentially learn how to do it as I'm working.
Yeah.
And that's what takes the fun out of it. Because it's like, well, this is really going to slow me down to figure out how to draw this perfectly. Is it possible for me to kind of like sidestep it a little bit? Because I think you come down to a certain thing where it's like, do I do a shitty car and feel bad about the fact that I have a shitty car, or do I really take the time to kick the ass of this car in this one panel that is only in it for like that one panel and really and like basically take over my whole day?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I haven't quite figured. I'm not with buildings and stuff. I'm getting better at those, so it doesn't take me as long to work that stuff out now. But with cars, there's still something funky about really getting my head around them that I haven't figured out yet.
I mean, if you have to do 22 comics are 22 pages generally, and if you have to do generally 22 pages in 6 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever, you don't have time to challenge yourself every single page. You need to have pages where it's like, all right, Batman in the dark alleyway. There's Gordon smoking a cigarette. Got it. No cars, textures, bricks. Nothing hard here. This is going to be an 8-hour day. And then you've got the next page where Gordon gets into his car and lights up the roof and then takes off. Do you have time to really draw that car? Is this the best place to spend your calories, or should you spend it on the next page where you're drawing Batman by a gargoyle? Certainly readers are going to want to see that. I mean, yeah, I appreciate Gordon's sweet ride being rendered correctly, but most people probably care more about Batman's gargoyle.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why the next book that I'm going to be doing, thanks to everyone who donated to my awesome Kickstarter. And I mean that in that you guys made it awesome, not that I'm giving myself a pat on the back.
That's not what I heard. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm the Veronica Vreeland of this story, I guess.
How droll.
That's why my next book is going to take place entirely during World War I, where there was just basically mud and broken trees.
Yeah, the only technical drawing you have to do are those stupid bowl helmets that we were all wearing back then.
Yeah, and I have one. I bought one from a costume store.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting some really cool lighting effects and shadows and stuff with those things.
Yeah.
Even the tanks are cool, but it was like those are even kind of sort of easy to draw. I don't know how your feeling was when you drew it for that cover, but
yeah, I like that tank. That's the one that was used in Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. I've drawn it before. It's always a good tank. So, sorry, one more quick story. A friend of mine was doing layouts for a really famous comic book artist. Again, I won't mention his name. Different than the guy that I fucked over with the car cover. He was really behind on a book, and my friend was doing layouts, and I saw these layouts, and this is really good. I hope the artist draws what you're suggesting, because this artist is very good, but I hope he doesn't get lazy like artists tend to do sometimes. And he had this shot of all these soldiers and a couple main Marvel characters standing behind a tank, like a World War II style tank. And it looked awesome. I'm like, man, I would love to see this artist who's drawing this book draw your layout, because he hasn't put that much detail into any panel for years. But I think that this is the calling to him to actually, spend the calories and do this right. And when I finally saw the published book, the artist had taken the tank, moved it completely out of frame, so you will only see the tip of the barrel. And it's like a cartoon Acme tank style tank barrel. And then all the other complicated soldiers are shoved off to the side, like cropped. And then you have the main character of the book, which is what the book was named after. He's front and center, like a splashy shot of him. And it's not nearly as awesome as it would have been. Yeah, I don't know. All right, artists get lazy sometimes. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, I bet he sold that splash page of the focus on the main character for a lot more money than he would have sold it for a tank page.
I know. Well, the setup that my friend had was, the rendering of Hellboy, the photo of Hellboy as a kid surrounded by all those soldiers.
Sure, yeah.
I love that panel that Mike drew, and I think that it took a lot of time to get all the helmets right and the facial expressions and everything is draped in shadow, and Hellboy is perfectly framed by all these photos. And I thought that was my friend was setting up, which would have looked awesome, but that takes a lot of work. Like, that's a lot of calories to pull that off. Right. And I think this book my friend was working on was really, really behind. So, what are you gonna do?
Well, you got to do what you can.
Yeah.
Cool. So what would you rate this one?
I'm between a 3 and a 4.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it I'm gonna be cheap and say it's a high 3.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
We give high 3s around here. That's fine.
Yeah, why not? In our multiple point system, 5 point, but also multiple subset point system.
It's a loose 5.
Yeah, loose 5. So that's going to do it for Birds of a Feather. Take a quick break, and we'll be back with What is Reality? What is Reality? Written by Marty Eisenberg and Robert N. Skier, directed by Dick Seabass, and in this one, seeking to prove once and for all that his is the superior mind, the Riddler lures Batman into a riddle-solving contest inside the virtual reality of a computer game in order to save Commissioner Gordon's life. In the course of solving the riddles and escaping the Riddler's traps, Batman learns that he is able to manipulate the virtual reality landscape much like the Riddler does. Yeah, so two things.
Yep.
I love that this is right in the pocket of that early 90s, hey, everybody just found out about this concept of virtual reality, but nobody knows what it is. Yeah. And how this show determined to do that and go down that road the way the X-Files had and all these other shows in a completely inaccurate way of describing what virtual reality is.
Yep.
And also, isn't this essentially the same plot as the last Riddler one, where he's just like, come into my video game and
It is. It's beat for beat the same episode. I think it's turned up to 11. Sorry, I keep using that expression. In fact, in the Nintendo NES version of this game, there were 2 different levels dedicated to the Riddler, and they were each of these episodes. Because I remember playing this episode, and Batman can only step on every 2 chess spaces before one crumbled, and everything was colored red, and you had Riddler in the background like pointing down at you like a godlike view basically. And I enjoy both these episodes, but I definitely question why they felt the need to redo the previous episode literally beat for beat. I mean, it starts off, you've got Robin in it, you've got Riddler running around making a few really lame riddles. Batman finally gets to the gauntlet, whatever it might be. The first time it was like a park that he converted to a trap, whatever, death trap, and now it's like
it's actually a flip of the last one, because the last one was a video game that they turned into an amusement park.
Oh yeah,
and this one is literally drawing Batman into a video game.
Yeah. So when the writers complain about how Riddler episodes are so hard to write, I'd say, well, you really only wrote 1. But didn't get 2 episodes out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like to write a riddle. I have no idea what I would do, honestly. This seems like it's really hard. But it's the same thing.
The thing I actually really like the riddles when
Batman's driving around, he's holding change, he's like, cents, copper, red.
Well, they're just so outside the box. They're so friggin' weird. And when the thing that I actually laughed out loud when Batman and Alfred determined that the riddles were giving him the letters DMV, I was like, that is so abstract and so hilarious, and ultimately serves no purpose, because it's like, why would you give Batman that element of that's not like, it's not even like cluing him into where he's hiding or something. It's just like a random piece of his plan that serves no ultimate purpose other than to, I guess, send him on a wild goose chase. I guess.
I don't know, man. And
the quarters, the headquarters thing. I mean, they're just so weird and abstract, and it was like they had to reverse engineer them.
Yeah,
I assume, in order to write them. I found them very, very fun.
Yeah, and the only thing that makes up for that is Robin is actively pointing out how dumb they are in this episode. Yeah. Like the amount of times he's like, "Oh, give me a break." He's aware that they're shitty, and at least the episode makes fun of itself in a way.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's essentially the same episode as the last one, and it's just more of an animation showcase, I guess, because they got to do some cool virtual reality stuff.
Yeah.
But there's so many weird loose ends, like, how did they get that giant supercomputer inside of the police station?
Yeah.
And through that seemingly one tiny door?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you have to like build a computer before you build a police station around it.
Yeah, like you would have to specifically work into the architecture for the building a place to put that giant computer. Yeah. Also, I love that it was Robin got foiled by the concept of Wi-Fi. Because he's like, it can't be connected to the internet. There's no phone line. And Riddler's like, Wi-Fi, bitch.
But he doesn't talk about the internet. He says it's not connected to a phone line.
Yeah.
And then Robin checked the software. He didn't check the hardware, i.e. the giant, massive plug coming out of the bottom that's plugged into another Obvious plug.
Yeah, that's like saying you get in front of a computer and you couldn't find the file you were looking for because you were just looking at the Photoshop app or something, as opposed to searching the hard drive. It's a very rudimentary understanding of computers. Also, I 110% thought that at the end they were like, well, I guess the Riddler's gotten away. I thought Batman was going to be like, I don't think so, and like kick the computer and it was going to open up and the Riddler was going to be inside of it. Because it was, I felt like that was the only plausible way to end this, but apparently not.
I did like the ending when the Riddler is stuck in his own machine. I thought that was kind of like a bittersweet ending. Or kind of a sad ending for him. Again,
it reminded me of the movie, the Batman Returns, a little bit, where he's got that mind sucking machine that it ends up driving him nuts or whatever, and he ends up in Arkham Asylum at the end.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
was this before the Batman and Robin? Or Batman Forever?
This was 1992, so I think yes. Yeah. This was November 24th, 1992. Mm-hmm. March 7th, 1993 was when they played it in prime time.
Right. So this predated the Schumacher stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
You remember? I remember when virtual reality it really tried to push its way into pop culture in the 90s.
It's the same thing that 3D did, where it was like the concept was there, but it wasn't good enough yet. No. But they tried to push it anyway.
Yeah, they had a VR something machine. It had like these big plastic red goggles you put over your face. You'd step into this thing, and it had a ring around it so you didn't step off of it and fall down, basically.
Yeah.
And it was basically a giant TV screen right in front of your face, and it gave you a fucking headache. And if you could easily give you epileptic seizures if you're prone to that stuff. It sucked. It wasn't as good, and I think the industry was pushing VR, but even as an impressionable 13-year-old at the time, I was just like, no. So even now, when I see VR making another comeback with people turning their smartphones into screens and putting on their faces, whatever's going on right now, like I'm sure it's going to get there eventually, no doubt about it. But I'm still not sold on if it's actually going to happen this time.
Yeah, do you remember Virtua Boy, the Nintendo?
That too. That was the big red. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, also very lame. I actually did a virtual reality thing recently. I was at a casino for my buddy's bachelor party, and they had a virtual reality thing set up. It was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Because the 3D technology has kind of caught up to the VR technology, so it was like, you've got that headset on, and you feel like you are in the game. It was very cool.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine. It's not quite what the more imaginative writers thought it was going to be. Where like, oh, you've been sucked inside the game, and apparently based on this episode, you put that headset on and then just like flop to the side or something and can't actually move.
You better wear an adult diaper while you do it. Go ahead.
Do you remember a TV show called VR5?
Yeah, I do. I don't remember what that was though.
Yeah, it was a VR5 was an American science fiction television series broadcast on Fox, and it only went 13 episodes, and it was about the daughter of a computer scientist who was working on developing virtual reality, and I think he gets sucked into the computer or something.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so no, the father and the mother die in a car crash or something, and then the daughter who works for the telephone company and is a computer hobbyist accidentally discovers that she can enter an advanced type of virtual reality where she can interact with other people. Her actions in the virtual world have an effect on the real world. She subsequently agrees to use her abilities to help a mysterious secret organization called the Committee. She receives her covert assignments from Frank Morgan and later from Oliver Sampson, and her friend Duncan advises her and helps her when he can. So the show frequently uses inconsistencies in continuity and distinctive color scheme as clues to suggest what is actually happening at various points in the series. So it sounds like it sounds like there was I mean, if you just look it up and look at the cover of it,
I'm looking at it right now. It looks like a poor man's Daryl Hannah as the main character.
Yep.
You have a guy with her that looks like the Highlander. Actually, I thought this was Duncan MacLeod. I forget the actor's name.
Oh yeah, he does kind of look like Adrian Paul.
Adrian Paul, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And this actress, I've seen her in some other stuff. She's got one of those faces that pops up a lot in entertainment.
Yeah, it also featured Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer in it as her buddy for a while too.
Oh,
I guess.
Yeah. There's also a motorboat called a VR5 that I'm discovering.
Oh yeah,
stupid Google. Give me the show.
But yeah, the cover to it is just like, imagine any overblown computer ad from the back of a comic book, and that's like the poster for the show. Where
it looks like the Aerosmith music video for "It's Amazing."
Yes.
Yeah. You have like some grunge guy with long hair who can't get laid, surrounded by Mountain Dew, plugs in and starts using these like Nintendo Power Gloves, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's actually a little bit creepy now that I think back to that video.
Yes, just a hair. Yeah. But yeah, the virtual reality boom of the early 90s was really interesting because it was like this. It was this idea, this novel idea that had a lot of like creative potential, but it didn't live up to the way other people were thinking about it. It was like the equivalent of when you pick up an old Nintendo game and you look at the cover art for the Nintendo game, you go, holy shit, whatever this Metroid thing is, it looks unbelievable. And then you plug it in and you're like, oh, all right, this doesn't entirely live up to the cover art that it had.
I mean, the painting?
Yeah, the awesome paintings.
Oh, I thought you meant like the screenshots in the back. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the game Adventure for Atari, way better painting than the yellow dot you play with as the
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had to do a lot of heavy lifting on that box art early in the days. But, one of the things that got me back into video games, not that I'm huge into them now, but when Xbox 360 and stuff started coming out and whatnot, I was like, oh my God, the games actually match the box art now. Like if you pick up Batman Arkham Knight and it's got that awesome, fully rendered Batman and standing on the city and stuff, that's what you're playing.
Right.
And I think it's the same kind of thing with virtual reality where, I mean, not quite, because it's not like we're all lawnmower man or anything. But
right.
It's kind of caught up where, oh, this is actually as cool as people expected it to be back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And still does not is nothing like what was in this episode.
No, yeah. You got to wear an adult diaper or something while you're plugged into this thing because your body, like you said, just slumps over and you just start to drool. One thing that I didn't like was episodes like this. Like, I get the potential for fun animation stunts, but what bugs me is the rules aren't clear. So Riddler, is he controlling this universe? So if you could distract him or fool him, or if you make him separate a million times like Batman does at the end, how would he knows that he's gonna lose control, because Riddler also has to hold this place together, and then Batman's on a horse, flying through the stars, and then there's this constellation bull that starts charging him, and suddenly the bull rams into the side of the galaxy and creates a shattering hole. Like, what is going on here? How did Batman know that the glass would shatter? It's just all over the place, and I mean, I know it's a kid's show, but that kind of stuff really bugs me when it comes to plots like these. You know?
Well, it kind of falls into the same trap as the last Riddler episode, which is the parameters of the game are not really well defined. So when they get to the end, it just sort of starts to turn into a big mush of random stuff.
Which happened, like you said, in the first one too.
Yeah, and like in this one, you get to the point where it's basically the Inception world, I guess, because Batman's all of a sudden like, I can control the VR as well. And he turns his hands into mallets. And I'm pretty sure that's not how this works, or it probably shouldn't work. Mm-hmm. And it made me think about the traps that the Riddler has in general, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that the Riddler's traps, his games should actually be fair? Or would they actually be unbeatable? Because that's the thing I was thinking watching this. I was like, but what's more important to the Riddler, winning or proving that he's smarter than Batman? Because if it's winning, technically his game should be unbeatable. It's because he's creating the game, so there's really no reason why he should create it fair. But if it's meant to be...
Go ahead.
If it's meant to be to show that he's smarter than Batman, then I guess, it would have to be fair. But there should be a moment where he has like the board flipping moment where he knows Batman's going to win, so then he starts pulling out the crazy shit.
So I think that the Riddler becomes more defined in an episode the next episode with him in it.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he's killed Batman, and because Batman's dead, he kind of regrets it, and he burns his mask. Like, he's not going to be the Riddler anymore because Batman was the only one who deserved to face the challenge or could live up to the challenge or something like that.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, Riddler's motivation, at least in that episode, is he likes to challenge Batman because he respects him. I don't think it's proving that he's smarter than him. So I think maybe at the beginning, the Riddler was obsessed with proving to people that he was smart, but as time went on, he respected Batman as an equal, and then he just liked to get him into these traps and challenge him, just like a game of chess meets mousetrap over and over and over. The stakes get higher each time just because he's bored, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably the more interesting way to go with it, is that he's almost more fascinated by Batman than anything else, where he understands that Batman, even though he doesn't want to admit it, he understands that Batman is probably his equal, if not maybe a little bit smarter.
Right.
But so his goal is he's kind of intrigued by how far he can push Batman and whether or not Batman can solve the problem.
Right.
And it makes me think about how in this one, Batman is like, well, I guess I can also control. It's like playing a game with a little kid, where the little kid changes the rules on you, and it's like, well, I have a giant gun and I'm invincible.
It's like a game of Calvin Ball from Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah. Yes. And it's like, I was thinking, I feel like cheating to beat the Riddler. You can debate on whether or not Batman cheats here, because I guess technically he just understands his capabilities better, but it feels like cheating. And I feel like
he cheated the first time too. He used the hand of fate to skip the phase.
We had someone comment saying that Batman doesn't actually cheat there. I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but it was something about he doesn't cheat because he's still working within the parameter. I don't know. I forget what it was. I apologize for mangling your comment, but
interesting.
I feel like generally cheating to beat the Riddler is not the best way to beat him, because that's always going to embolden him by saying, well, you cheated to win. I feel like if you're going to beat the Riddler, you have to beat him. You have to straight up beat him.
Right.
And maybe that's part of it. Maybe Batman ultimately can't beat him, so he has to cheat, which then just brings the Riddler to be like, okay, well, you're just telling me that I'm smarter than you are because you had to cheat to win.
Right, yeah. All those ideas could work in different versions. I guess it depends on how you like your Riddler.
Yeah. He's an interesting character. I was actually kind of surprised that we've seen 2 Riddler episodes. I think both of them were this season, I believe. And it's fun to have 2 of them, but I was actually surprised that we would get 2, because it feels like they tend to do, like, of the more slightly off the beaten path ones, they only do 1. Like, this is that Penguin episode is, I think, the only Penguin episode we've seen with him as the main bad guy since the first season, I think.
Yeah, with the little kids in the basement.
Yeah, I think that was the only other one where he was like the central. He's shown up in like cameo here and there.
Yeah,
but that's the only other one I can think of where he was straight up the villain.
Yeah. Do modern takes on Riddler and Penguin? I haven't read the most modern recent Batman comics in continuity, but is Riddler like a psychopath killer now? Are they both murderers? I'm just trying to think of how they would update these characters, and I hope they didn't go the let's just make them more violent route.
Right. I think it's varied. I think the Riddler has gone through a bunch of different things. Like I know there was I think we talked about this in the last one. There was the last Riddler episode. There was a period during the 90s Nightfall era where he got juiced up on venom, so he was like a big muscle guy, which never felt right. I think he kind of is kind of open to interpretation. Yeah,
right. And we said before the Riddler is a little bit like the Clock King.
Yes, yeah.
Would you rather do a Riddler story or a Clock King story?
I think I would rather do a Riddler story, just because I like the branding of the Riddler more than the Clock King.
I'd take Clock King because it's less known about. He's a less popular character, so I'd like to take a crack at it. But Riddler. I mean, he's the only one of all the villains that I drew that I really didn't change him that much, because I just didn't have much to say. In my book, they were all zombified, basically. So Riddler's actions were limited to shooting. He has a cane that he walks with, so it's like a machine gun cane. So he's basically just there as support while there's mayhem going on in the background. Like, you don't need to focus. I mean, it doesn't make sense that they would even need Riddler in this situation, but I put him in there, so why not keep using him?
I remember when we were talking about Curse of the White Knight, I didn't even realize Riddler was in the first one because I had pitched Riddler to you as the main villain for Curse of the White Knight, and you're like, oh no, I already used him. I was like, oh wow, I didn't even realize he was in there because he's sort of way off in the background.
Yep, yeah, I purposely didn't put him. I focused on Bane, Croc, and a few others. Mostly, they're the ones that got closest to the camera. The other ones just kind of fell in the because I just didn't. I mean, I could write. I'd love to take a crack at a Riddler story one day. As we talk about this episode, I'm sort of having ideas about how to turn the Riddler into the villain from Saw or something like that.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit in the last episode about making his puzzles either more dangerous or I was saying how I really liked the idea of treating him kind of like the Zodiac Killer. Mm-hmm. Where he's sending, riddles and stuff to the newspapers and stuff, and that's where he gets his infamy from and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I had a few Riddler ideas while I was watching Mindhunters, the newest season, and I'm not going to share them because I might use them. But there's a ton of stuff that I think you could go into for the Riddler that hasn't been done yet. Honestly,
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing about him is that through all of the changes that may or may not be done to him, his look is more or less the same. There's only really a couple things you can do with the Riddler. It's either the leotard look or he's got some sort of green suit on, and that's about it. Yeah, and I don't know if that's because it's so limited or if it's just that's what looks best or what.
Yeah, I personally would rather do the suit version just because I'm more about contemporary anyway. But if you like the Adam West or even season 4 of this cartoon, they put him back in a leotard.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they do. Yeah. So what would you draw in this one?
I think Batman. I think I know what you're going to draw. So let me tell you what I think you're going to answer with is Batman on the unicorn flying. He's wearing like a medieval,
the armor. Yeah, I thought armor. That was cool. I was thinking about that.
And draped in red too. It's almost like firelit Batman.
I didn't. So sidetrack.
Okay.
I had a feeling you were going to say that, and I was thinking about it specifically. And I do not like the red Batman.
What? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't doing it for me because it just I don't know. Just painting everything red doesn't work for me the same way because there's no lighting to it at all. It's just he's red now and he's got a black hood. It just didn't work.
You're such a snob. Oh my god.
What are you talking about? I like it when it looks
orange,
good.
Yeah. Orange.
No, the orange
red.
looks great because you're actually lighting him by fire, so you've got the shadows and stuff. And this one, it was just they painted him pink, and it wasn't doing it for me. And which leads me to my second point. Mm-hmm. They're really dropping the ball as far as firelit Batman this season because there have been multiple times this season where he has been involved in some sort of fire-related mishap. And they do not go the extra mile to paint him with that orange and brown color. It's just regular Batman. And Birds of a Feather is one of them because there's a big bomb that goes off, and he's like swinging over it and standing inside of it. Same colors, no change color scheme, and it's really bumming me out because that is my favorite Batman.
So wait, if you put an orange filter on Batman near fire, you get the Batman fire palette.
Sure.
All they did with this was put a red filter over it, but there's no red there. I mean, I feel like you have a
there's
bias. There's
no shadows though. They don't do anything cool lighting wise. They just turn everything like red.
Oh, so this is like a red design element, whereas firelit Batman is orange light shadows.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
You're still a little bit of a snob though.
I just know what I like, man.
Okay.
And Dimetap colored Batman is not it.
Yeah. Nice. When I was watching the end of this, as Batman's dividing himself into 2 and then 4 and then 8 and 16, I thought, this is really cool. And I thought, actually, if I worked at this studio, I would be super bummed out to be handed this script because there's no getting out of work early when you get a script like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And a lot of when people give you those ideas, they're like, isn't it going to be exciting to draw like 1,000 versions of Batman? And I'm like, no, like maybe for some artists, but. Yeah, no thank you.
What if I just draw one, and then the rest of them are standing in the shadows, and all you can see are their eyes?
You need to do what artists do now is make a brush that's just Batman standing there staring at the camera. So you make a Batman brush, and then you just hold down on the Cintiq. It's just like, and, you reduce the size and shape and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. The armored Batman is pretty cool. I did like that look. I don't know. This is a tough one for me as far as what I would draw. Part of me thinks I would want to go a little crazier with the VR world at the end there. Mm-hmm. But even that, I don't really know because there's no parameters on what it's supposed to be. So it's tough to kind of like say, oh, I would do that a little bit different. It felt kind of like that Simpsons episode where Homer gets sucked into the 3D world, and it's just like a grid on the ground, and then like some pillars and stuff standing up out in the middle of nowhere, and like a lake or whatever. Yeah. I would do. For some reason, part of me is saying I would do the reveal of the Riddler in his machine, because in my head I'm thinking like having his machine be this huge, intrusive monster of a machine that he's stuck in would be kind of fun to draw. So it's like in order to generate the power that this game is apparently capable of, he has to plug himself into this much larger machine with tubes and shit going out of him and all that kind of stuff. I thought that would be kind of fun, but Armored Batman is, I guess, my safe choice.
I thought the same thing you did. Batman with a helmet on, sitting in front of a giant, crazy-looking VR machine is still pretty cool.
Yeah.
You could go. So this one's all Art Deco, obviously, because that's the style of the show. But you could go Frankenstein if you wanted to on that kind of tech, with gears and cogs and electricity, and that could be really cool, especially if Batman's eyes are red as he puts the thing on or whatever.
Right, yeah. Give him like a big Jack Kirby-looking machine that he's sitting in front of.
Yeah, that works.
What would you rate this one?
I'm going to go a strong 3. I'm taking off more points because it's just a rehash of the previous Riddler episode. Yeah. I think it's a better version, but I still think like one of them has to suffer in points because they're basically the same.
Right, yeah. That's a tough one for me. I'm between a 2 and a 3.
Ooh, a 2. Wow.
Because it's I would give it a 2 because it's just a straight rehash of the last one. But it does have a few elements in it that I think are kind of fun, and it probably is a little bit better. I don't remember what we gave the last one. I don't think we were very kind to it. I think I'm going to go 2.
Right.
Yeah. Which is, I'm hoping for a really great Riddler episode soon.
Yeah. There's one coming, I think. I don't want to overpromise like I did the Ninja episodes.
We all remember how much of an idiot you looked like there.
It's like recommending a really sweet restaurant, and when you go, the service is bad, and you own it for the rest of the night.
Yep. I stopped doing that with movies a long time ago, at least to the forcefulness that I used to, because if I came across a movie that I loved, I couldn't wait to tell other people about it. Be like, you have to watch this movie. And I did that once, and it went so epically poorly that it turned me off of doing it. Really, unless I knew my crowd. That's the thing. You got to know your crowd really well when you're doing that. Yeah. And I picked the wrong crowd, and it's not what you're thinking of. It was something else. It was years ago with the movie Cabin Fever. I saw Cabin Fever. I loved it. I thought it was like, it reminded me of, Army of Dark or Evil Dead and stuff, and I thought it was great.
Wow. Yeah. You doubled down on, or you singled down on it, I guess, to begin with.
Yeah, I went to bat for Cabin fucking Fever, and I've never I've never quite let myself forget that. So
I remember I went to bat hard for a band called Days of the New.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
I know Days of the New. Yeah.
Okay. So
finally found a reason. Now I need an excuse.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I remember I was so annoyed because all my friends got into grunge right before I did, and they introduced me to all these bands. So I wanted to find the next big band, and I was just dying to find who the next hit was, so I could be the first one to bring the CD into the cafeteria and be like, these guys, they've got it all figured out. Yeah. And I went in with Days of the New, and that ended up not working out.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that the kid, because he was only 18, the lead singer of that band, and then he fired all of the other band members and bought a drum machine or whatever, device you buy instead of having an actual human drummer. Yeah. And then it just went downhill from there. And then I was actually at an Aerosmith concert once, and Days of the New opened for them. And this guy comes out on stage, who's the lead singer, and he drinks a beer and throws it into the audience and starts rocking out, like rock stars do. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's like 19 years old. That had to be like a Diet Sprite or something. Like, you're not that hardcore, dude. And anytime Days of the New in any way comes up on my radar, I always feel immediate shame that I chose them to go to bat for.
Yeah. Sounds to me like you still like them. That kind of that experience with Cabin Fever, I think, is what started me taking a different tack with that stuff now, where it's like, if there's something that I really enjoy that I know that a lot of other people don't, I come with a fully formed explanation about what it is about the thing that I like.
Oh, you do. You turn into podcast Clay.
Yeah.
Which I know you hate.
Yeah. No, well, before I was actually podcast Clay, that was just regular Clay dialed down a little bit. But now I have a tendency to, if it goes unchecked, then I could go all night about stupid shit.
Well, no, you learned to leave it out, because we were hanging out with my friends and someone asked you, what's up with all these flat earthers? And you took a long sip of your beer, put it down, and you're like, how much time you got? So you leave people out. You usually go for the short answer, and if they want more, then you'll go into the long answer. So
yeah. It's like I said, you got to know your crowd. If people come to you, if people are coming to me with flat earth stuff, I will give them what they come for. Because I will talk about how fascinating I find those people all day. But I also know when in mixed company, maybe only give them like the best of, and then kind of change the subject to something else. No. Anyway, okay, that's gonna do it for us, I think. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a rating or review on iTunes. Much appreciated. If you're on any Batman specific Reddit boards or anything, and they're like, hey, what's a good Batman podcast? Because I'm sure there aren't any, which, parentheses, I know there's a ton of them. If you mention this show, that'd be awesome. If you get any questions, hit us up on Twitter at BATTASS Podcast, BATTASS Podcast, or shoot us an email, battasspodcast@gmail.com. And next time we will be back with I Am the Night and Off Balance. So thanks, guys. See you then.